So I'm going to talk about the 5 mistakes that most freelancers make based on my experience, because this is mostly their biggest mistake, right? Then the first one would be probably something that we usually do if you're a beginner. So we tend to like overthink or overloading it about. What does it mean? It means that you're an individual which is like starting out. This is here. And then you have no idea what to start. Why should you start? And then you have all of these questions that you have in mind. So you're in a confusion state that you tend to take action, and then you expect a specific outcome. And what happens if that outcome does not uh, happen? You become sad, right? You become depressed, or become stressed, or you give up. Sometimes we get the outcome that become successful. We got a client on our first try or second try, or just a beginner. But this becomes unsustainable because you've learned how to work without a plan, or without even having a real goal, or without even having or knowing what is your real why do you want to start, why you want to start a freelancer. Because as you are repeating the cycle, this why that you have will be your drive on your specific outcome. Now, if you don't have a specific outcome yet, if you don't have a specific value that you want to project, why you should do this, then more likely it will sabotage your success. So that's one thing that you need to do. The second thing that you need to do, the mistakes that most people make when they're a freelancer, they're just like starting up, would be, I cannot really do. I don't know how, but let's do this, right? They're really undervaluing their skills. So what we mean by undervalue is you have a specific skill, all right, and then you have this amazing skill that you have, right? This is you again, and you have some skill in terms of your creativity, your mind. You have an amazing hand who can work on a great project, right? This is your project, and this is really great. So that's good. But the problem here is you just create things, you offered it to a specific client. Let's say this is a client, and then the client's going to pay you with your skill. But the client renegotiate the work to you to pay you less, right? To pay you less. What do? The problem is what you have in your mind is you think that you are worth less. You think that your skill is not good enough to be paid. Now, that's one of the biggest reasons why you earn less, because you think that your service is less. Listen, if you have a personal brand, you will not be treated by the client as a commodity by just another editor. It means if you have a brand, whether your business or a personal brand, the client will treat you more higher because the perceived brand is higher. Imagine drinking a drink without a brand compared to a Coca-Cola. Since that Coca-Cola has a brand and it's known by a lot of people, most likely you will buy Coca-Cola instead of a no brand drink. This same goes to your service. You're going to offer a service that's going to be like to the client, you demand or to get paid higher. Of course, client, it really require like negotiation skills. You have to be good at negotiation, and also your portfolio must be optimized or must be good enough to be paid enough or to be paid higher. The portfolio is responsible for the 80% of your of your what do you call that, of your paycheck, or your the agency's revenue. If you don't work in your portfolios, you don't work at your work itself, the outputs itself, because if the output is low, then reasonably the value is going to be low. Thus, the client that will pay you will be also low. So you have to increase your output so that you can increase the value that it can provide to your client. Okay, and then sometimes we live in a society where we are result driven, right? In LinkedIn, there's a research that most of the keywords there for businesses, they pride of being result driven. But the problem with that is, if we become so result driven, we tend to lose sight the progress of our analytics. We tend to lose sight about the long term gain. We tend to focus on getting quick gains and destroying the vision that we have. So that's problem. All right. The next one is the third mistake is like taking rejection person. I read a book, and this is the book that I actually would recommend to you if you just wanna read it personally. And this book talks about that rejection are not just like the end game. So it's not when someone says no, you can actually turn it into yes, or it could mean as a feedback, or it could mean as an opportunity to grow yourself. So in a single word no, there's a lot of opportunities that can happen. And one of the ways to counter this is you ask the question why. So when you ask the question why to the rejector, you as a rejectee, what happens is you get feedback, right? And you get to strategize with that feedback, or you get to turn it into yes by explaining or addressing their concern, because their problem is revealed by asking the why. So, in short, just use the powerful magical tool why, not just in professional life, but in your uh, personal life. And then you can take that rejection not personally. Because in every rejection is just an opinion where it's formed by people's values, by culture, by traditions, by the way they live up with their parents. So it's not actually a fact, right? Because the thing here is, when you offer, let's say, lipstick to men and they said no, what do you think happens there? The problem is you targeted the wrong people, or you targeted people with different needs. Doesn't mean that they said no, they don't want to have lipstick. It will reflect to you personally as a rejectee. It just reflects on their values, their backgrounds, their preference, their gender. So there's a lot of things that, and you cannot assume those things. Why they, you cannot really know behind the scene who they really are. It's not your job to really know who they are, especially if they're a stranger, unless you wanna have a relationship with them. But basically, one of the biggest mistake of many freelancers is this taking no personally, to the point that they stop growing, or they stop having achieving, continue freelancing, learning from their mistake, and they see it as a failure, and therefore they quit freelance. That's the thing that you want to avoid. Number four would be overthinking instead of doing. The thing is, we tend to overthink, we tend to overplan, because we say that if we get safe, we will get the specific result. But the thing is, you are just paralyzing yourself in a specific position. Okay? You're paralyzing yourself in a specific position. And the real success, the real outcome, is a staircase. And you just overplan. You're afraid of making mistakes. And you think you'll be safe if you do this and that. And you're stuck with perfection. You're stuck with analysis paralysis. What happens? You don't get specific outcome. The thing is, we get success by doing at by doing it. Action. Because in every action, there's a equal and opposite reaction. Remember, in the law, the more you take action, the more you make mistake. But each of those mistakes is a feedback on what step are you going to take next. Okay, and if you repeat that cycle, you will get the specific outcome. So I have this laws we call the mustard seed law. In the mustard seed law, it's a very small seed. I think it's one of the smallest seed in the planet. And then this may seem very small, but in the Bible it also says that have the faith like a mustard seed. You can never underestimate it because when it grows, I think it's taller than most of the trees in the world. And that's how powerful it with this single mustard seed. When you nurture it, when you train it, when you reinforce it, it grows like the largest tree in the world. One of the gigantic tree that can grow. So that's how powerful it is. Which brings us to number 5. Number 5 really requires a specific skill. The problem is that we don't have guides on who will do that for us, and that is no system in place. So we use these tools, we use this softwares to track our tasks, to track payments, to make our communication better, to hire teams, to build teams. But if we fail to have systems, we leave ourselves into a chaos. So let's say you're working with a client and you have another client and you have another client, and there's going to be a load of tasks that you have to do. Okay, task for client A. Can I even put shapes here? Task for client A. That would be, how do I do that? Okay, I just going to draw. This is my first time going on the Miro, but you have task for client A, and then you have task for client B. You have task for client C. We need system if we have multiple things to do, right? And you're just one person. And you don't have a system. You just keep working and working. And then you lose track on what you're going to do, how will you send it, and what's the next task. And then all of these thoughts goes down to your mind, and then your mind becomes less clear. The way to do this to make it more clearer is you gotta eliminate this thing that hinders you too much, which is confusion and lack of clarity. And you only remove those by building system. What an example, if you have a lot of tasks to do, or you have less time to have, or you don't have a day-to-day routine, and you end up being confused because you always have to think what's the next thing to do. You might want to have a daily routines or checklist, and then you might want to have a system where you outsource these things so that you can leverage your time and energy to, let's say, better return on investment activities like finding more clients, or reinvesting into your business in terms of the system, learning more as a CEO, so that you can have better time on this, and then you can use softwares. So there's probably a lot of things that you can do, but the point here is you can have systems so that you can have a clutter-free mind and think more and have a better return on investment activities that would lead to your business growth exponentially. So that's all the things that I could say to you. But you have to keep in mind all of those mistakes that most people commit, so that they may not be able to really take things personally. All right, the first one is you gotta overloading without plan. Sometimes you tend to overload the law, and sometimes you just have to we just have to go back to address this question. We just sometimes have to pause And then we got a plan. We gotta have set intention so that we can have specific outcome and we can measure it specifically so that we can sustain the success. And then we have to know our value, but also balancing it with your skill, upgrading your skill. Taking rejection is not an endpoint and not personally, but getting excited to have that this mindset that be say accepting no, receiving no is a chance to experiment with life as uncertain. And you gotta also read this book. This very takot, especially if you are uh struggling with the Jethro. And then number 4, you gotta stop doing this biggest mistake, overthinking instead of doing. And then you have no system in place, so you gotta build a system. This requires continuous practice. So if I'm going to summarize, that's all the mistakes that you have to like address from 1, 2, 3, and then 4, and then you'll have the specific outcome that you always destined to become.